nombre es Natalie, and I'd like to invite you to witness the journey of my destruction. Rebel from the womb. Even before I was born, this world was asphyxiating me, my lifeline wrapped around my neck, choking me into submission. Helpless baby turned willful child, swinging from treetops with leaves in their hair and a dirt necklace. Mud patties were the order of the day, and I was wearing a dress. What comes to mind when you hear the word Latina? We've been represented in the media in two ways: the cleaning lady and the hypersexualized woman with an attitude. As for me, I stress clean, and I love adventures of sexual exploration. And my attitude, well, it's a work in progress. Labels and stereotypes don't define me, yet I have spent my life shedding them. In fact, my journey has been a constant cycle of death and war against the colonization of my mind, my body, and my spirit. An endless fight that requires surrender and rebirth. Each time I emerge a new person. I've been so many people in this lifetime, and I grieved each of them until I realized that those parts of me didn't die. They were integrated. Soul pieces once lost, now whole. In my writings, I reflect on my experiences as a queer Latine navigating the confines of societal labels and expectations that limit Latina identities. Through the process of decolonization and self-healing, I explore how shedding cultural indoctrination surrounding gender and sexuality has shaped the complexity of my gender identity and personal evolution. Judith Butler's words resonate here. If the cause of desire, gesture, and act can be localized within the self of the actor, then the political regulations and disciplinary practices which produce that ostensibly coherent gender are effectively displaced from view. In other words, society teaches us to internalize gender norms as if they originate from within rather than imposed expectations. But I wasn't always whole. My experiences with gender have been one of decolonization even before I knew the meaning of the word. My first memory of gender indoctrination is from the age of 4. I was at my brother's baseball game. I wanted to play, but that's not for girls. At least that's what they told me, and I refused the lesson. I walked away, and a strange lady with giant hair rollers said to my mom, "She walks just like her father." They laughed boisterously, and my mother said to me, "Take smaller steps, like a lady." I didn't know what that meant, but their laughter stuck to my stride. The second memory was implanted soon after. I was a wild child, an old soul full of knowledge. I didn't understand, but I felt deeply. I was born with a sense of justice that poured from my mouth until my throat ached or I was beaten into momentary silence. I love my rage, but that wasn't always the case. I was taught to be ashamed of it. One day, after a perreta, tantrum, my grandfather said to me, "If you continue to be this way, you'll become a bad person." Because after all, las niñas didn't behave that way. The ancestral wound inflicted by the colonizer had been officially passed down. I became receptive to the teachings of what a girl is supposed to be. And that began the disappearance of me. Ladylike, the construction of a Latina. Don't tug at your dress. You don't need to climb trees. Stop wearing your brother's clothes. You're wearing the dress. hate that stupid dress. Sit up, cross your legs. You walk just like your father. Laughter. So much laughter. Do you have a boyfriend? Lipstick, always lipstick, makes them look. But I don't want them to look. Straighten ese pelo malo, that bad hair. Paint your nails, cover up your showing too much. No sex until you're married. I learned the Latina aesthetic through the strict cultural policing of my femininity. The programming was a communal effort. Anyone from family members to random strangers on the street had a say. A collective performance to be enforced and upheld, especially by those it harmed the most. No cracks allowed in the facade. Yet beneath the surface, I began to sense the instability of these imposed identities. I began to sense the instability of these imposed identities. Even as a child, I perceived how my authenticity disturbed the women around me. It was as if my energy revealed what they refused to see and whispered, "You are as constructed as me. The same anarchaic womb has birthed us both. I call upon you to investigate your nature as I have been compelled to confront mine. I challenge you to risk abjection and flourish as well as I have. Heed my words, and you may well discover the seams and sutures in yourself." Stryker's call echoes my journey to pull at the seams of the gendered expectations that bound me in my childhood. The louder the call, the more relentless the policing. Ladies dress like this. Ladies sit like this, walk like this, talk like this, bat their eyes like this, paint their face like this, and swing their hips like this, like this, like this, like this. Dissociating during this endless rehearsal was my salvation. I daydreamed of who I'd be when I left home. Spoiler alert, I am them. Somehow, at that very early age, and on some level, I understood this parody, and that my rage emerged from the subconscious recognition of societal forces attempting to shape my identity. So, I did what any teenager would do. Let my rage lead the acts of resistance against the constant corrections, training, attempting to mold me into the correct gender. Mastering the art of gender performance. Scratch that, transgression. Hair is the defining symbol of gender and female sexuality in Latino culture. That said, the ultimate transgression is to shave it off. It was only a matter of time. But my transgression went beyond gender defiance. It was a deprogramming of ancestral, imperialistic cultural beliefs and practices instilled across the three races that comprise the Puerto Rican: indigenous Taino, African, and the colonizer's lineage, the Spanish. In time, I realized transgressions weren't enough for me. I wanted to wage war on cisgender expectations of womanhood. I learned that war wasn't always loud and bloody. Sometimes it's the soft humming of hair clippers running through my hair, or jumping in a mud puddle while wearing that stupid dress. But sometimes war is within, and the ultimate transgression is healing. Forgiving yourself for what was beyond your control and empowering yourself to join the fight. The path before me was untrodden, haunted by the brave souls that transgressed before me. Their song and invitation lured me into the dense fog. There was no turning back. These places of possibility within ourselves are dark because they are ancient and hidden. They have survived and grown strong through that darkness. Within these deep places, each of us holds an incredible reserve of creativity and power, of unexamined and unrecorded emotion and feeling. The woman's place of power within each of us is neither white nor surface. It's dark, it's ancient, it's deep. Lord guides us, conveying that to dismantle these systems of oppression, we must dive deep. We must dive into the deepest, darkest depths beyond where our wounds have been implanted. I understood this to be true with the help of my indigenous elders. My power awaited me in the parts of me I was taught to fear, my rage. My journey of decolonization through self-healing was my only way forward. Side note on being a queer Latina, on being queer as Latina. Being a Latina is entrenched in body function. Sexual orientation is culturally indistinguishable from gender. From an early age, you're prepared to be a wife. You're taught how to cook, iron clothes, and keep a home among the many countless tasks. You learn the horrors of premarital sex by the shaming of your schoolmate Juanita Fulana de Tal, whose parents apparently didn't teach her to keep her legs shut. And God forbid anyone finds out that you don't want kids or that you're queer. No one prepares you for that. In fact, the internalized reinforcement of heteronormativity among many Latinx people fuels a cycle of self-hate and homophobia, perpetuating compulsory heterosexuality. For queer Latinx individuals, it is often easier to leave their country than to face their parents, even society, and tell them you're anything but cishet. As lifelong students of culturally inflicted gender norms, queer Latinx people know exactly how that would go. The fear of lineage loss is often the first reaction when you come out to your parents, as if their efforts lay shattered at their feet. This sense of betrayal roots itself in a long imperialistic history of norms that enforce heterosexuality and traditional roles for women, which Adrienne Rich describes as deeply ingrained in women's life. As she writes, women have been convinced that marriage and sexual orientation toward men are inevitable, even if unsatisfying or oppressive components of their lives. The chastity belt, child marriage, erasure of lesbian existence, except as exotic and perverse in art, literature, film, idealization of heterosexual romance and marriage. These are some fairly obvious forms of compulsion. The first to exemplify physical force, the second to control of consciousness. These forces echo the expectations faced by Latinx women, where deviation from heterosexuality is not only personal, but also challenges a deep historical framework of control. I never wanted to be a woman. I wanted to be a tree. My experience with gender has been epic. It led me to a profound exploration of self, which often resulted in what felt like violent healing. Shedding cultural indoctrination requires a deconstruction of self, a becoming of what Buddhists call no one. Reflecting on it, I think about my younger self and how from the beginning I knew I didn't want to be molded. Children are born wise. As I aged, the expectation of societal labels weighed heavily on my soul. I refused to pass down the cultural heirloom, and I vowed to myself, it stops here. Unbecoming Latina. I waged a war. Within, without, I shed, I tore, I peeled, I danced, I laughed, I cried, I screamed, surrendering to the gleeful rage. I screamed until it no longer hurt, until the dust of my tears cleared and I could see the path before me. Then I died. I woke to the deafening silence left by the rage of unmasking. And I rose, but not like a beautiful phoenix. I rose as death rises, rooted, connected to the mycelium network of the Pachamama, ready to share, support, create, destroy, unite. I never wanted to be a woman.